it's Jennifer from Fiber Flux. In this video, we're going to learn how to crochet the quick gift triangle shawl. This is a wonderfully cozy and comfy shawl that you can make for gifts. You can make it as a gift to yourself, and it's a great project for stash busting as well. We tend to collect and accumulate yarn over the year, and at the end of the year, you can kind of wrap things up and make this scrappy, wonderful shawl. Now, I used 4 colors, but you can go as far with the colors and get different yarn weights and textures as you like and really get creative with this project. It's a really easy project. This is part of our 12 weeks of gifting crochet along on Fiber Flux, where every week through the end of the year, we're going to be making a quick gift project. Now, we've had a bunch of them already so far, and this is this week's, and we still have a few more before the end of the year. I will put the directory link below so you can click down below and see all the links for all the projects. We've done hats, mittens, scarves, cowls, all kinds of fun things, and they all make great gifts. Now, we've used some of our leftovers from the other projects to make this sort of striped, scrappy project, and you can use some of your leftovers too. Before we get started, I wanted to mention to use the hashtag FiberFluxCal if you are making this project, to share it on social media. It's really fun to see what everybody's making. And also join our Ravelry group and our Facebook group to hang out with the other makers for the cowl as well. It's a great place to kind of see what everybody's doing, ask questions, etc. Now let's talk about the sizing. This is a nice, large, generous shawl, and it is a triangle shape. So when we go up from the bottom point, we're going to be starting at the bottom point today and working upward. So as we work upward, this side edge, I got the dimensions of 52 inches. Now, your rows will indicate the width and the height, so you can just keep going as long as you want it to be. But if you want the same dimensions as me, if you like the way it's draped, you can see the other photos on the FiberFlux blog and see how it's wrapped and things. If you like those dimensions, it is 52 inches up the side, and then across the top edge where it will go around your shoulders, that is a generous 85 inches. And then if we go from, now let me just spread this out a little bit. If we go from the bottom point straight up to the top of the shawl, that is 35 inches. So it's a really nice, generous shawl, and you can make it huge if you want to, almost like a blanket shawl, or you can make it smaller, make a little shawlette. It really depends on the yarn that you have and how much time you have before the end of the year and gift giving time. So let's get started. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a ruler or tape measure is always helpful to kind of measure as you go along. We're going to be using the 8mm L crochet hook, which we've used for our entire 12 weeks of gifting series. And also, we're going to be using the same yarn that we've been using for the whole series. This is, now let me grab one of these. This is designed to be a scrappy kind of use your leftovers project. Now I'm kind of putting this in the middle of our series, so if you have some leftovers you can get started on it and kind of work on it as you go along. But we're going to be using Red Heart Super Saver Chunky. So if you've joined us on any of the other tutorials for the 12 weeks of gifting, you'll notice that we're using the same yarn. So I did want to have kind of a scrappy project that if you're making all these gifts along with us, there's one that you can kind of take all the leftovers and make it into another project. I love those projects that use up all that yarn. So you can kind of make this as you go, but I grabbed 4 skeins of yarn that I've used so far and some other stuff. I'm going to be adding to it, but 4 skeins will definitely give you a nice size shawl and get you off to a great start at the very least. Now you can make your shawl huge, you can make it a little shawlette. It's really up to you. It's simply the more rows that you work, the larger and wider and taller your shawl will become. Okay, but 4 skeins is great. Now, if you like these colors, this is the dark orchid, the buff, the flamingo, the gray heather, and then this is the real teal. I may even add some more colors, but I just wanted to grab sort of a sampling to get us started. Okay, now each skein of this is 173 yards if you're using the solids. If you're using the heathers like this one, it's 168 yards. Again, no really specific yardage amount on this shawl because you can really make it as large as you would like it to be. So let's get started. So to begin, we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop and tighten. Then what we're going to do is chain 5. So to make a chain, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Next, we're going to move on to row 1. So for row 1, we're going to work into the 5th chain from the hook. That's also the chain farthest from our hook. This loop does not count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's that first chain we made. And what we're going to do is work 3 double crochets into that chain. So to make a double crochet, wrap yarn around hook, insert the hook into that chain, and bring up a loop. You have 3 loops on the hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. And we're going to work a total of 3 double crochets. So that was 1, and then we're going to do 2 and 3 double crochets. Next, we want to chain 1, and then in that same chain, we're going to work another double crochet. Just like that, okay? So this is the very beginning of our shawl. Let's move on to row 2. For row 2, we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let me grab a little bit more yarn out of our skein here. And we're going to turn our work. An easy way to remember, sometimes you can kind of lose your spot when they're smaller and it doesn't look quite like a triangle yet. Just keep that tail down the front and have it point towards you, okay? So we did a chain 4 and turned. Now in that space, remember that chain 1 space from the previous row? We're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1 into that space. So 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, 3 double crochet, then chain 1. Then what we're going to do is in that turning chain space, remember we chained and turned, in that turning chain space, we're going to hop over to that and work 3 double crochet. So 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, 3 double crochet, and then we're going to chain 1 and work 1 more double crochet into that same turning chain space, okay? So already row 2 is complete. Now it's starting to sort of take on the shape a little bit. You can see we have a group of 3 double crochets here, a group here, and a group here. It's starting to take on a triangular sort of shape and a granny stripe sequence, okay? Let's move on to row 3. Now row 3 is that row that we'll be repeating for the entire shawl. So once I show you this, we'll work row 3 once or twice to show you, and then we'll learn how to switch colors, okay? So for row 3, we're going to chain 4 once again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn our work. Again, a little way to keep that bottom in mind is to just point that tail towards you. That keeps me straight. Now, in the first space, that chain 1 space, we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1. 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, 3 double crochet, chain 1. Then we're going to hop over to the next space, which is right here, and we're going to work the same thing. 3 double crochet, chain 1. 1, 2, and 3. Just like that. Then we're going to chain 1. Then we're going to go to that turning chain space. Remember that from the last row we worked? And you're going to work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3. But then we're going to chain 1 and work 1 more double crochet into that same space, okay? So let's pull our hook out and just kind of look at our handiwork here. We're going to shape things up a little bit. Now you can really see it's starting to look like a triangle, okay? It's nice and open. We're using a big hook. This is a pretty swift project. Okay, let's repeat row 3 one more time just to show you, because as you work row 3 over and over and over again, you're going to have more spaces to work into. You'll start and end the row the same way, but each row you work, you'll have more of these spaces to work into, okay? Let me just show you how that's done, and then we'll move on to the next section of switching colors, which is always fun. So chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, turn your work. Now remember that chain 1 space, we're going to work our 3 double crochet, chain 1. So 1, 2, 3, chain 1. I love these center pull skeins of yarn. It makes it super easy to work. Hop to the next space, the chain 1 space, and do the same thing. 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, hop to the next space. Now see we have more of this row like I mentioned before. 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then that turning chain space, do the same thing. 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then also work a double crochet into that turning chain space. Okay? So for the rest of your shawl, depending on your colors, you may not be ready to switch colors yet, but I'm going to just show you for demonstration purposes. But we can shape up our little triangle. It looks really nice, really cute. I'm ready to switch colors, so I'm going to just, now you could really work this till it runs out, then work this till it runs out, then work this, but I'm just going to show you how to do it real quick. Okay, now there's lots of ways to join yarn. Definitely feel free to use whatever method you prefer. I like to cut the yarn and just fasten off and tie the new yarn on. That's my choice. Definitely do what you like best. Okay, so I fastened off. Now let me grab, so when you start using up skeins of yarn, sometimes they can get a little tangly, so try to keep everything as neat as possible, which mine seem to have a mind of their own right now. Okay, so right where we tied that off, you're going to insert your hook back. There will be a little loop there by your knot. Insert your hook back into that loop. Hook the new yarn onto your hook. Pull it through. This is really important to learn how to do with these scrappy kind of leftover sort of projects. Tie that yarn right on. Now I wanted to say too, if you're using other yarn, this is really determined by the amount of rows you work. You could really use any yarn and hook. Just look for the recommended hook size on your particular yarn. It'll be a little hook diagram. All right, so once you've tied your yarn on, grab the working yarn. That's the yarn attached to the yarn ball. We can leave these tails alone for now. Insert your hook back into that stitch, bring up a loop, and chain 4. We're just going to be repeating row 3, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4. You're just going to proceed as normal, okay? So we're going to work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, we'll go through this one more time, 3, chain 1. Now if you notice our top edge here is a little bit longer, so we have more stitches to work into. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3. These granny stripe projects like this work really nicely when you swap colors like this. It really shows off the stitches. Chain 1, then work 3 double crochet into the next space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Next space, 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Now you want to work 3 double crochet. We're going to go to that turning chain space. Same thing we're doing. We're just repeating row 3. So 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. And then remember, chain 1 and 1 more double crochet into that turning chain space. Okay? So now you have everything you need. You're well equipped and have everything you need to move on to the rest of the project. So I'm going to keep going with my triangle shawl, and then we'll rejoin once this thing gets a lot bigger. Really, you can customize it to be any size you like, but we're going to rejoin towards the end of the shawl, and I'm going to show you how to finish it up and take care of all these ends that we'll probably be creating as we go along, okay? So just stay with me and we'll finish it up in just a moment. Just working that very last stitch of the very last row. So once your shawl is as wide and as tall as you would like it to be, then you can go ahead and wrap things up. We're going to cut the yarn and we're going to wrap yarn around hook and bring it through the loop. And then we just need to weave in all the ends. But before we do that, let me just show you what I have here. Now I used a lot of leftovers from some of the other projects we've done for the 12 weeks of gifting series. And as you may be able to recognize these colors, so this was from the ear warmer. You may recognize this color from the fringe scarf and the mittens. This was from our button cowl, etc. So I did, I stuck with 4 colors, and I didn't necessarily have to do the same number of rows each time. As you may notice, this row of gray is a little bit shorter than this one, so I just used it up, but I did repeat the colors in the same order. That gave it kind of like a neater feel. So if we get this all laid out, you may be able to recognize some of the colors. This was from the fringe scarf and the mittens. This color was from our pom-pom hat. This color was from our ear warmer, our button cowl, and so forth. Now I didn't necessarily stick to the same number of rows each time per color. You may notice this one's a little bit shorter, this one's a little bit wider. It's just a matter of which yarn yardage I had left, and I didn't really get super worried about that. But I did stick with my palette here. I did the dark purple, charcoal, flamingo, light gray, and then I repeated the colors. Again, I did 2 repeats of my color sequence. So I am really excited to see all the colors that you come up with, because this is a scrap yarn project, and whatever you have on hand from this series or other yarns as well. If you have some thin yarns, you can hold them double and so forth. The last thing we need to do is, let me slide this down, because we're going to work on these ends. Whenever you have a project with lots of colors, you may have lots of ends like I do here. Now you can weave those in as you go along, and that will take care of that. But for more open stitches, sometimes I like to weave them in myself with a tapestry needle, so I have more control of how the yarn gets woven in. Just remember, when you have lots of different colors like this, to weave the ends of the same color into the color section. So for example, this one is a charcoal end. I'm going to go into the charcoal section. I just threaded my tapestry needle, and I'm just going to go through these stitches. And this is a granny stripe, as we discussed before, so it is completely reversible. So try to go into the center of these loops. Sometimes you go in the back loops if there's a definite front or back to our project. But this one, we're just going to try to travel this tail through the middle of these stitches, because it is reversible, which is nice for a shawl, because you kind of, throw it over your shoulder and drape it around. So I went in one direction, I came back in the other direction to sort of lock that tail in place, and then I'm just going to take my scissors and give that a little snip. So what we'll do is just repeat that for the rest of our tails. Just go around your entire project, and once again, for example, this is a purple tail, so I'm going to stay in the purple section. So go through and take care of all these tails that you see. Depending on how many times you switched colors, you may have more tails, or if you stuck with solid or just 1 or 2 colors, obviously you'll have less tails. But for these scrap yarn projects, this is one of the things that you usually end up with lots of tails, because you used up lots of yarn, which is a wonderful thing. Okay, so we're going to go through, whoops, and just trim all of our tails. Weave and then trim our tails. All of our ends have been woven in, and our shawl looks absolutely beautiful. It's cozy, it's lofty, and before we go, I just wanted to mention that if you make this shawl, please use the hashtag FiberFluxCowl on social media to share your work. It's always a lot of fun to see what everybody's doing. And join our Ravelry group and our Facebook group for the community of makers for all of the Fiber Flux crochet alongs. And it's a great place to hang out and share your work and see what other people are using for their yarn and their colors. It's a fun place to hang out if you're doing the cowls with us. So So that is how you crochet the quick gift triangle shawl. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again!